Hi everyone, welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. And today I'm making lemon loaf. Lemon loaf, lemon bread. It's a sweet bread, a quick bread, otherwise known as a tea loaf. It's kind of a cross between a cake and bread because you bake it in a loaf pan, but you slice it like bread and you can put butter on it if you like. Anyway, let's dive right into this recipe and get her going. Right here I have a cup and a half of all-purpose flour. That's Canadian all-purpose flour. In the United States or in the UK, that would be bread flour or strong flour. Anyway, to this I'm going to add, to my flour, I'm going to be adding a teaspoon of baking powder. That's baking powder, not baking soda. Two entirely different ingredients. You can't interchange them in your recipe, okay? And I'm also going to add a half a teaspoon of salt, which I'm going to be careful pouring here. Here we go, a half a teaspoon of salt. And I use plain old table salt. You can use kosher salt. I've been using this for 50 years and it works just fine for me. Now I'm just going to stir these ingredients together because I don't want to leave them together. It says to blend or sift together, and I don't know about you, but I haven't owned a flour sifter in many years. So I'm just going to blend them together. There we go. Now I'm going to put this to one side, and that I will be using in a few minutes. But in a separate bowl, I am going to be taking a half a cup of butter. Now I put this out last night so it would soften to room temperature, because it's a lot easier to do this if it's at room temperature than if it's cold from the refrigerator. So a half a cup of butter, and don't worry metric people, all the metric equivalents will be included in the recipe when I write it up in my description box down below. And to that I'm going to add 1 cup of sugar. Now this is like plain white granulated sugar, the kind of sugar used when you're baking, and I believe in the UK that's known as caster sugar, but here in Canada we just call it white sugar or granulated sugar. This is the fine grain white sugar. So that's a half a cup and a half a cup, and 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1 whole cup of sugar. Every time I'm baking I am using my math. All those people who said, why did I study math in school? That's why you studied math in school, so that you were baking, you didn't have to go, oh, I have to put in a cup of sugar, so then you have to find a 1 cup measuring cup, because you know that 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. Well, 2/2, which is 1. Anyway, I'm just going to now, I'm going to take my sugar and my butter and I'm going to cream these two ingredients together. That means, what that means, creaming it means is that I'm going to combine my butter and sugar together so that there's no loose sugar left and there's no granular texture to it. It's all creamed together. It makes a nice smooth combination, and that definitely changes the texture of your finished bread, your finished loaf. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here and just keep blending them together. You can do this step with an electric beater, a handheld mixer, your stand mixer, or you can use just a wooden spoon like I'm doing today. Okay, now I have combined my butter and sugar, and as you can see there's no separate sugar in my bowl here. Now you can beat this as much as you want at this stage. You're not going to hurt anything, and you're just going to improve your cake a bit. But this is going to work. This will be sufficient to work. But if you do this, you don't have to worry about overworking it. Okay? So that part is done. Before I go on and do anything else, I'm going to deal with my lemon. Okay? I have two fresh lemons here at this particular time, and I'm going to take just the zest off of these lemons. I need 2 teaspoons of, that's 10 milliliters of lemon zest, and the fresher the better. So I'm just going to move this around on my lemon. These are 2 particularly small ones, so I'm just going to move this around on my zest. Don't get down into the white pith. You just want to take the yellow off of the lemon rind. That's where all your lemon oils and your lemon flavoring is. This is going to give lemon flavor to the body of my lemon bread. Just a couple little, this is a zester. Get bigger ones or smaller ones. This happens to be a really large one. For a lot of years I used the cheese grater, a fine cheese grater, to do this. It's easier to do with a zester, but I have done it with a cheese grater. You have to be a little bit more careful not to get down into the white pit. Okay, there's my fresh zest. That I'm going to add to my flour mixture. Now, if you want to add nuts to this, which I'm not going to do today because I don't really like nuts in my sweetbreads, you can add either a half a cup of finely chopped walnuts or a half a cup of finely chopped pecans, whichever you happen to prefer, or if you don't like nuts in it, just leave them out. And I'm going to measure up 2 teaspoons of lemon zest to go in here. And I'm just using the same teaspoon I used to measure the baking powder. And I have to pack this down in here. There we go, that's 1. That's 2. And if you have a little extra, it doesn't really matter, because it just adds a bit more lemony flavor to your bread. I'm just measuring this because I want to make sure I have at least 2 teaspoons. So now I'm just going to stir this in to here. And like I say, you would stir the nuts in here as well, which would mean they would get flour, coated with your flour. I also need 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. So I'm going to take my zested lemon, and believe me, it's easier to squeeze the lemon juice out of here after you've zested it than to do the squeezing of the juice and then try to zest the lemon after you've cut it in half. Believe me, make life easier for yourself. I'm just going to use my little juicer here. This is a fairly small lemon, so I may need to use part of that other lemon I took the zest off to do some of this too. A little hard to tell how juicy they actually are until after you've got them actually squeezed. And this juice I don't need until after my bread is baked, so I'm doing this a bit in advance, that's for sure. I may as well do it now and it'll be done. By the way, if you take your lemons out and you leave them on the counter overnight, it helps if they're room temperature, and the same with your eggs. If they're room temperature, that's better when you're baking, so I try to remember to do that. Now, when my bread is finished, I'm going to make a glaze. I'm going to need 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and 1/4 cup of sugar. So I can put that together while my bread is in the oven. But right now I'm just going to measure this and see if I've got enough. Yep, I do. When I'm doing this, I just measure to make sure I have at least 2 tablespoons. And if I have, I just dump whatever's left in, because it doesn't hurt one bit to have a little bit extra. But you want to make sure you have at least 2 tablespoons. And if I have 2 tablespoons and a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon, I'm not going to worry about it. It just means I'll have a little bit extra to put on the top of my bread when I'm finished. And my next thing I'm going to be doing is adding 2 grade A large white eggs. Well, white eggs. You can use brown ones if you prefer, but they should be large eggs. I'm going to beat these until it's light and fluffy. Now, if you were to use grade A extra large, or if you were to use jumbos, jumbo eggs, you would probably want to adjust the amount of milk you're going to be adding to this later, just to make sure you don't have more liquid than you need. So now I'm going to beat these till they're light and fluffy. Now this is a lemon loaf. If you wanted to look more yellow, you could add a couple of drops of yellow food coloring if you like, but personally I prefer not to put food coloring in things unless I have to. There now. Now you can see what's in my bowl has changed again now that I've beaten in my 2 eggs. It is light and fluffy. And now I'm going to start adding my flour mixture and a half a cup of milk, which I'm going to blend together by making 3 dry and 2 liquid additions to my batter. So that means I'm going to eyeball how much 1/3 of this is, which should be about roughly a half a cup. Since it's a cup and a half of flour, there we go. That wasn't a half a cup of flour. That's a bit more than I should have been using, but that's okay. It all goes in here eventually anyway. Just makes it easier if you can be a bit more accurate than me. And let's see. And once I've beaten this all together, now I'm going to add my liquid, my milk, into here. Not all of it, but half of it. Okay, now I'm going to add the rest of my flour. Now the rest of my milk goes in. And I'm just going to blend in the last bit of milk in here. Here's my final mixture. That's already been put into my prepared pan. My prepared loaf pan, and this is a standard size loaf pan. I'll put the measurements in my description box down below. But standard loaf pan to make a single loaf of bread. Now, if this wasn't a stoneware pan, I would grease this pan. So if you're using a pan that's metal or oven-proof glass, make sure you grease it first. But stoneware, after you've used it, you don't have to grease it. So that's one of the good things about stoneware. So I'm just going to put my batter in here, and then I'm going to bake this in my preheated 350 degree Fahrenheit, or I think that's 175 degrees Celsius, and I'm going to leave it in there for 65 minutes. Then my lemon loaf will be ready for the next and final stage. Always remember to clean everything off, because you don't want to leave batter in your bowl or on your spoon. I'm just going to give this a little smooth on top. There we go. There, all cleaned out. Now, into my oven it goes, and I'll be back in 65 minutes to show you the next step. Here I am once again with my lemon loaf, hot and fresh out of the oven. Now, the next thing I have to do, I'm going to put that to one side. Okay, now before I do my next step, I have to wait 5 minutes after I have this out of the oven. And while I'm waiting, I'm going to take my 2 tablespoons of lemon juice that I squeezed and 1/4 cup of sugar. And I'm going to combine those. I'm just going to combine those in a small bowl. You stir quite a bit because you're still going to have some little bits of sugar left when you're done. But I'll make a nice thick syrup too. And once it's been out of the oven 5 minutes, I'm going to put this lemon juice and sugar mixture. I'm going to put those all over my bread while it's still hot in the pan. And the bread will absorb this sugary, syrupy mixture, sweet lemon juice mixture, and it will enormously enhance my lemon bread flavor. And before I remove this from my pan, I'm going to let it sit until it's cool. So I'm going to leave it in this pan for probably an hour, and then I'll take it out of the pan. Then I have to wait. It says, well, the recipes always say that sweet breads, quick breads like this, cut better after they've been made for a day. It's worth the wait. And one of these loaves cuts into 14, 16 pieces, depends on how thick you cut them. And with quick breads like this, sweet breads, tea breads, you can either choose to butter them or eat them plain. Either way is good, but I'll tell you, if you take a plate somewhere and you butter half of the slices and the other half you leave plain, they'll eat the buttered slices first. But they taste better. As you stir, you'll notice more and more the sugar gets to be dissolved. It is pretty much a saturated solution, so you probably will have a little bit of sugar that isn't going to dissolve, but don't worry about that. Just make sure it all goes on top of your sweetbread. In fact, if you stir this up and leave it sit, it will settle out. So stir it up just before you're going to put it on the bread. So now I'm just going to spoon this over top of my bread, just like this. I like to cover the entire top of my bread. And if there's a little crack on top, I like to add a little extra into that. And so I just kind of spoon it all over the place and then sort of level it out here. You want this to go everywhere. And of course it's going to flow down the sides of your pan. And while your bread here is cooling, it will soak it right into it. Lovely lemony flavor. You can see where you've already spread the sugar solution because it will be shiny. And now I have to wait about an hour until this bread cools enough so I can take it out of the pan, because I want to give that a good chance to soak into my cake. I hope you enjoyed my recipe today, and I hope that you will like, subscribe, leave a comment below, give this recipe a try, and come on back and watch me next time on Ruby's Classic Cooking. Bye for now.